following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 2018 Virtual Sim Racing Showdown live here at Sydney Motorsport Park. We're on the grid raring to go already for what is going to be the first of the semi-finals for the all-important race tonight, where we will have a driver crowned with a test drive in a Formula 4 car and walking away with a pretty nice trophy to boot as well. This is V8SONLINE's coverage on the iRacing Esports Network and live on Shannons Nationals as well. I'm Bob, alongside me is Zach Hanlon as well, and we are just raring to go any second now for what's going to be another 7-lap race. So the pressure is on for these drivers to get the start right perfectly and make it happen from the front, because of course you've got to be up the front, you've got to be in the lead or second to go through, and that is where the pressure is really going to mount on a lot of these drivers, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I think only one person from each round is going through to the final today, so you need to be in the lead at the end of this race to progress through to the final and have a chance at a seat in a Formula 4 car. We're just finalising the round now. We have in this round top qualified Andrew Carl for this round. We have Scott Zalowski in to the left of him and Chris Owen as well in this race. So it's going to be a very intense race these last 3 semi-finals today. So we just see the cars starting to grid up now, and this is going to be very intense.
It certainly is. We're just waiting for the lights to come on, and they're ready now as the revs rise up to 7,000 RPM. Here we are, 4 red lights, and they're going to diminish in any second, and the clutches will drop, and immediately a great jump from Chris Owen, who leaps into the lead of this race. So a fantastic start there as the cars now all hurdle their way into turn 1, jostling for position, single file just about as well. And this is one of the cleanest starts we've seen so far. No one's getting too aggressive yet. They know that there is a lot on the line here as they funnel their way into turn 1, tight on the apex, a bit wide there for the blue car out front. So he's just trying to hold on to it as much as he can at the moment. You can see it's just bunching up a little into turn number 3. A bit of a pass there up the inside. They will go side by side into turn number 4, which is a very bumpy part of the circuit. He makes it stick, just about contact made, but he gets the job done.
Yeah, Chris Owen got a brilliant start, but unfortunately getting passed right back by Scott Zalowski on the first lap. Andrew Carl off to a very positive start, has a nice little lead as it stands as these two guys start to battle. But Andrew Carl got a very nice clean start as well, and now these guys are going to have to try and work together to get up to the front, because remember, you need to be in first at the end of this race to progress. Second and third are out, and without a seat in an F4 car.
Absolutely, he gets the job done.
Yeah, Chris Owen got a brilliant start, but unfortunately getting passed right back by Scott Zalowski on the first lap. Andrew Carl off to a very positive start, has a nice little lead as it stands as these two guys start to battle. But Andrew Carl got a very nice clean start as well, and now these guys are going to have to try and work together to get up to the front. Remember, you need to be in first at the end of this race to progress. Second and third are out without a seat in an
Absolutely gets the job done.
Yeah, Chris Owen got a brilliant start, but unfortunately getting past right back by Scott Solowski on the first lap. Andrew Carl, yeah, a very positive start, has a nice little lead as it stands as these two guys start to battle. Andrew Carl got a very nice clean start as well, and now these guys are going to have to try and work together to get up to the front. Remember, you need to be in first at the end of this race to progress. Second and third are out without a seat in
Absolutely gets the job done.
Yeah, Chris Owen got a brilliant start, but unfortunately getting past right back by Scott Solowski on the first lap. And Andrew Carl, yeah, a very positive start, has a nice little lead as it stands as these two guys start to battle. Andrew Carl got a very nice clean start as well, and now these guys are going to have to try and work together to get up to the front. Remember, you need to be in first at the end of this race to progress. Second and third are out without a seat in
the job done.
Yeah, Chris Owen got a brilliant start, but unfortunately getting past right back by Scott Solowski on the first lap. And Andrew Carl, yeah, a very positive start, has a nice little lead as it stands as these two guys start to battle. Andrew Carl got a very nice clean start as well, and now these guys are going to have to try and work together to get up to the front. Remember, they need to be in first at the end of this.
It shows just how much faster these new weather conditions are.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably expecting that these guys are going to be roughly 2 seconds a lap faster than they were yesterday, so might see a few people once they build up a little bit of confidence dipping into the 104s, but as we said, you can carry a lot more speed around this track, and that's going to open up the opportunity for more issues for people. Obviously you can carry more speed into the corners, means you have to brake a little bit earlier and a little harder, and getting the traction down is probably the only real place where you have a massive advantage here. But if you heat up those rear tires a little by sliding over those hills, you're going to kill that advantage. So kind of have to take a different approach to driving these different weather conditions. And as we can see at the moment, Andrew Carl is the man who has set the precedent. He has a commanding lead at the moment, and with just 3 odd laps to go, he is looking to set himself up for a seat in an F4 car for the main race this afternoon.
And we were speaking to Andrew a little bit earlier today, and you know, yesterday wasn't the best day for him. He had his little issues. Of course, he had that drama in the opening round as well, but he said he was feeling a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident going into today, and I think that's reflecting as well. Yesterday we saw little mistakes. Today he's looking pretty comfortable out front, and like we say, got a fantastic lead at the moment as it ranges up to almost 2.5 seconds now over second place. So Andrew really doing the work at the moment and getting that extra mileage at the moment, which can be used in the final. We're hearing a lot of opposite lock in the background, and these drivers really fight.
Chris Owen might have actually just gone into the wall. We'll just see if we can get a picture there for you, but I saw him looking very loose as he came through the final corner.
Damage on the car
and
too.
He does have a bit of damage on that car, so I think Chris Owen, I mean, he was in the final position there, just doing everything that he could to make himself up to Scott Solowski there. And unfortunately, just coming a bit of a cropper into the final corner. But Chris Owens, no matter how he ends up with the result today, as he gets very loose once again. In fact, this is the incident we were talking about, I think, where he ended up in the wall. That's a replay there. So obviously you can see Chris Owen pushing as much as he possibly could. But no matter what happens today for Chris, we've all been very impressed with his performance so far. And as we've said many times this week, and Andrew Carl, one of the best GT drivers in Australia when he is on form, and to be in the same race as him and be competing up against him and doing as good a job as Chris Owen is very respectable indeed.
Yeah, absolutely, because let's not forget, Andrew Carl and Scott Solowski, they're regulars to the iRacing service. They know the nuances when it comes to this Porsche Cup car. Chris has been completely in the dark and is really beaten and impressed by a lot of these other fellow iRacers that are using this platform, which is arguably one of the more realistic platforms out on the market at the moment. So for Chris to jump in and be straight into it is a really big testament to just how good he is. But at the moment, it's not good enough to get himself into a Formula 4 car, because it's this man, Andrew Carl, out in front with just 1.5 laps to go of the now sadly no longer Oran Park circuit. But one of the joys of sim racing, we can bring it back to millimeter perfect detail, and it's right there, every little bump, every little crevice, and as you'll see right here down the hill, every elevation change as well, as he misses the apex just a little bit, but manages to hold onto the circuit. And at this point, what do you think he's doing? Is he playing it safe to bring the car home, or do you think he's just going to try and get a bit more experience before the final?
Well, you know, he does have a little bit of an advantage, but if he throws it all away now, he's not even going to make it into the final. So it looks to me like he might just be pushing the limits on the corner entry a little bit more rather than the exit, because I think the exit is really the place where you can throw it all away. We can see we're on board on Andrew Carl there, just really pushing the limits of what's possible with the braking capabilities of that car, just managing to pick it up, but didn't quite make the apex there, but carried some nice exit speed and got good mid-corner speed, even using a little bit of a wider line there. So he's obviously pushing himself a little bit, and I mean, he's got a 2-second lead with just about 3/4 of a lap to go, so he's got a little bit of room to play with. But as we said, if he throws it all away, he's not going to make it into the final, and all that practice is going to go to waste.
Certainly is, and there's a lot of places to lose it around Oran Park Circuit. Getting very close to the grass is one of them, and Soslowski is going to go a little bit closer to the grass again, throwing everything he's got. That is a Formula 4 drive potentially right in front of him. He needs to do everything he can, but unfortunately for him, there is a gap of 1.8 seconds, and that can't be made up in a single corner, so it will be the blue car. It will be Andrew Kyle advancing, our very first confirmed driver to make his way into the final here at the 2018 Virtual Sim Racing Showdown. Andrew Kyle has a chance at a test in a Formula 4 car. Scott Soslowski and Chris Owen, unfortunately, this is where their day comes to an end.
Yeah, absolutely, but big time respect to Scott and for Chris for coming down and competing. They put on one of the most exciting races we've seen in the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown yesterday, and you know, to make it all the way to the semi-final is a lot better than many other people have done at this event, and obviously at events prior as well. So very well done to Scott and Chris, and a big congratulations to Andrew Carl, who has progressed. He is our first confirmed finalist for the race this afternoon, which will be brought to you live here from Sydney Motorsport Park on the iRacing Esports Network. So we'll see if we might be able to get an interview with one of the drivers in just a moment, but we do have 2 more semi-finals coming up for you with some, I mean, we look at these splits here and some of them are just absolutely fantastic to look at, but we do have Andrew Carl here. Andrew, congratulations on winning your semi-final. You are our first confirmed finalist to have a chance at winning the VSR Showdown and a chance in a Formula 4 seat. How did that track feel for you today, and are you happy with how you performed?
Yeah, definitely a lot happier than yesterday. I had a little bit of a sleep on it last night. I was able to sort of work out a little bit like what the differences were with my sim at home, and I was able to obviously sleep on it, and then came back today and sort of hit the ground running pretty well.
Excellent. Well, we do congratulate you once again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the final. If you had to pick 2 other people to be in the final with from the list that we have left on the board, who do you reckon you'd want to have your competitors as?
Obviously, Josh is very fast, but you don't want him in the final, obviously, because he's going to be very stiff competition. But yeah, I think Josh is going to be very tough, and so is Dylan as well, because I think Dylan's got VR at home, so he's a little bit more accustomed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dylan, of course, has that Porsche experience as well, which you don't necessarily. You've done a bit of driving in the Porsche as well, but mostly you stick to the GT3 cars and also GTE as well. So you've got the challenge of, you know, really having to extract the maximum out of a car you don't really know all too well.
I do drive the Porsche a little bit just for fun, but I haven't really raced it since about start of 2017, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, the Porsche, the way that the brakes are a little bit, especially with these pedals, you have to take a little bit to get used to.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That was Andrew Kyle, and a fantastic performance from him to make his way into our final, and that will be on a little bit later, of course, live on the iRacing Esports Network and the Shannons Nationals as well. So awesome there from him to make his way. But who will be joining him That, of course, will all be decided at the end of semi-final 2 and 3, which are coming up very, very soon and feature some very tough competition, including Josh Anderson, Mitchell McLeod, Daniel Benefield, Richard Hampstead, Daniel Shields, who, let's not forget, does not compete on iRacing regularly. He's used to another platform, so that is something for him to adapt to, and he's had a lot of experience. But before we get into our next semi-final, what we will do is we'll jump into a break here on the iRacing Esports Network. We'll see you in just a tick.
Hi there, I'm Richard Jobling, Senior Software Engineer here at iRacing. I'd like to show you some of the work that we've been doing to improve the collision and the damage in our sim. One of the major changes we've made is how our collision systems work. The old system stored the track as parametric surfaces, and the cars were made of collections of spheres. As the cars moved around the track, we would recompute planes using the track surfaces, and then test those against the spheres. This worked well for spheres, but was too specialised to adapt to our shapes. So for the new system, we've built new high-resolution meshes for each track. This is more efficient and gives us a lot more flexibility for the car shapes. The new mesh incorporates all the track features our guys work so hard to replicate. Things like curb geometry and changes in the surface material are all baked into the mesh. We've also taken our laser scan data and applied that to the mesh. And since the mesh is so high resolution, we capture all the detail that's necessary so that the tracks are just like the real thing. With our new mesh, we can now represent cars using smooth, convex hulls, which grouped together form the chassis, the bodywork, and all the other parts of the car. The new shapes are a much closer fit to the shape of the real car. During impacts, the shapes can deform according to the damage, and eventually they can break off as separate objects. All the parts, like wings, hoods and wheels, can also hang from their joints, flapping and vibrating until they eventually snap off. All these changes are going to add a whole new level of realism to our races. If you want to find out more, please visit iRacing.com and check out my blog post for lots more details.
Hi, my name is Greg Hill. I'm the Vice President of Art and Production here at iRacing. This damage project that we've been discussing is certainly a project that involved all hands on deck to pull off. We've got a rather sizable number of cars in our portfolio, and not all of these cars have been built with this dynamic damage system in mind. So what we had to do is one by one go through our race cars, and we had a team of 3 artists, a highly technical modeler, our technical art director, and our associate art director. All took on each car one at a time, and the work involved was researching that car, researching what would happen to that car if it were in a crash, depending on the forces involved in the crash, how severely it would be damaged, what parts might come off, what those pieces might look like when they're removed, what it would look like where the car has areas exposed that were previously covered by bodywork. So they had to do a lot of modeling to each race car, and they had to do a lot of work to essentially set up how the car would react to forces. So essentially setting the strength of the materials. What kind of force would it take to rip off this side pod, for example? Or under what circumstances would this nose cone get ripped off of a car? Or under which would it remain, but just be badly damaged? But all said, it's been a lot of work, but seeing the car models interact with the physics system and the new crash dynamics is really exciting and really cool to see, and definitely makes all that hard work worth it.
Hi, my name is Jose Diaz. I'm a visual effects artist at iRacing. I specialize in particle effects ranging from fireworks to water fountains, debris, crash, impacts, all in the service of improving the driving experience. So you have the main sort of new damage model that Richard's been working on. So that takes into consideration all the mounts and the chassis from the cars and which materials they are. And he's making all the calculations that tell you, like, okay, it got hit from this one side and the strength of that impact is this certain amount of values. If you hit something, that means that this mount gets off, something breaks. This gets added on top of that to sort of complement what is happening there with things that you would see in real life when a car crashes. So typically in a car crash, you will see all these little particles of dust, metal, scratches that will take all that force and momentum and kind of explode in a way. And it's all being driven by how fast the car was coming, how hard the impact was against what. That will give you that sense of like, man, that person really crashed hard, or oh, it was just a small bump.
Hi, my name is Chris Lurch. I'm one of the vehicle dynamicists here at iRacing. Our role in the collision project is to tune the collision properties of each and every car to ensure that they behave in wrecks as a real car would. And we've spent quite a bit of time going through literature from the automotive industry on the subject to make sure that we have panels that deform the way they're supposed to, both temporarily and permanently, that pieces that don't deform but rather just break at appropriate times in appropriate ways. The cars are absorbing energy the way they should and aren't sort of bouncing off the walls in crazy ways. The major properties that we look at are stiffnesses, which is how much a piece of the car deforms when a load is applied to it. And then we look at a couple of limits. One is the force limit beyond which the piece deforms permanently. And then the second limit that we look at is the brake limit, the force limit beyond which the piece will simply break. And then we also will look at damping, which is how much the piece absorbs energy versus how much it takes like a spring and can absorb as potential energy and then rebound back out like a basketball would.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Sydney Motorsport Park. We're here for the 2018 Virtual Sim Racing Showdown, where one lucky driver will walk away with a test drive in an Australian Formula 4 car. And well, 3 of those competitors, Zach, are lining up for this next race, and we have some very fierce competition in this one.
Yeah, all of these guys have been very competitive all throughout this competition. In the blue car, in the middle sim, we have Josh Anderson. On the to the left of him in the red car, we have Mitchell McLeod, and to the right of Josh in the white car is Daniel Benefield. And we are very much looking forward to this race. All of these guys have been very competitive, as we just said, all weekend, and I think this is definitely going to be a very intense semi-final.
Yeah, it certainly will. We're just getting the cars ready now, and A lot of drivers just kicking back a little bit, just trying to get into the zone because, of course, they've rocked up. It's early in the morning, a lot earlier than the start time for yesterday. So they've got to prepare a lot better. They've got to be in the right mindset. And as we can see, the cars now line up on the grid. We're on board with the 2 car as we get ready for what will be the start of semi-final number 2. And the revs will rise. 7,000 RPM once again lining up on the grid. The 3 cars all dueling it out into turn 1 in just a matter of seconds, and the clutches will drop now, and away they go down the front straight, hurtling towards turn number 1 and 2, which is tricky to do it side by side. So how brave will the drivers be feeling? Anderson out front, McLeod's going to dive it up the inside, and contact has been made, and they've just about kept it on the track as well. More contact into 1, and Josh Anderson is around. The favourite heading into this race is all of a sudden facing backwards, and with 6.5 laps to go, Zach, he has it all to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh has been on fire all weekend, so if there's anyone that can do it, it's him. But now Daniel Benefield going up the inside of Mitchell McLeod. He's seen an opportunity. He's seen a little point of weakness in Mitch after maybe just feeling a bit hot under the shoulders while after that move on Josh Anderson, and now Daniel Benefield is in the lead of this race. So can these guys keep it clean? Are they going to scrap? I mean, Mitchell McLeod, he's a very aggressive driver. We can see just there a little bit of damage on that red Porsche Cup car for him. So can he keep up with Daniel Benefield? And if he can, are they going to scrap? And will that allow Josh Anderson to catch back up after that contact at turn 1?
Speaking of Daniel Benefield, before this race, he said he just wanted to hang back. He knew he'd be starting from last with the car that he was seated with, and all of a sudden, he has found himself in the race lead after a single lap of action. So Benefield has all the pressure in the world on him. He was very nervous. The hands were shaking before he got into the rig, and now he finds himself in the race lead with Mitch McLeod hunting him down. 0.4 of a second is the gap. It's going to come down a lot less under brakes into turn number 3. McLeod just piling on the pressure. McLeod, he's won iRacing championships. He's done this 100 times before. He is arguably one of the best that was once on iRacing. He's taken a bit of a more laid-back approach in the more recent years, but when it comes down to serious business, Mitch McLeod is a driver that can deliver, and right now he's got the afterburner all over the back of Daniel Benefield.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's been overseas to do some sim racing as part of his escapades throughout the years, so he is one of those people who has been at the top of the game, and here he is again at the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown trying to catch Daniel Benefield, who, as we've said a couple of times this weekend, he's not super accustomed to these Porsche Cup cars, and Mitchell McLeod hits the wall, and that's going to be big damage to the car, and he might have a bit of steering damage there. We'll have to see as he comes into turn number 1. Hard to say. I'm going to have a look over at the rig, and he looks like he's holding the steering wheel fairly straight, so maybe not too much damage there, but Josh Anderson, he is starting to claw back, and he's clawing back at about a second a lap. There he is in the background. He may be able to catch these guys before this race is done, and if Mitch can get back onto Daniel Benefield, he may be looking to have a bit of a fight on their hands here. But for the time being, Daniel Benefield leads Mitchell McLeod by 0.6 of a second. Josh Anderson now just 4.8 seconds off the lead after that spin, that contact at the beginning of the race. He was over 6 seconds off, and within 2 laps has already closed that gap down to now just about 4.8 seconds.
Absolutely, and a 1 minute 5.2 last time around. That is storming pace from Josh Anderson, so he is doing everything he needs to with McLeod. I think that damage, although it might not have bent the steering, it is hurting him, because that gap has now exploded up to 1.1 seconds, and on the exit, he's not afraid to run close to that wall, is Mitch McLeod, and he does gain a little bit of time back, but you can see that just a little bit of a wobble down the straight, so perhaps the stability of the car not the best. The rear wing, I think, is bent as well. So the aero of this car is not as good as it once was, and for a cup car there's not much aero to begin with, so it's all going a little bit wrong for Mitch McLeod, but turn 1 went all right for him, and he claws a bit more time back, and well, we're over halfway in this race now. The laps are ticking down for some kind of move to happen, but the real story once again has to remain Josh Anderson, gap now 3.8 seconds.
Yeah, that's coming down very, very quickly. He's a man on a charge, and little bit of damage to the left-hand rear quarter of that cup car, but definitely not enough to slow him down, because he is charging. We were talking last lap, it was at 4.8 seconds. It's down to 3.6 now. So we can see just those little scrape marks on the left-hand side of that car, but he is pushing like no tomorrow. A little bit of oversteer as he comes up through the uphill left-hander, through the dogleg, using every little bit of road and a little bit of the exit as well. Very hard on the brakes, and just using every inch of road, taking it nicely on the apex. Probably could have used a little more exit on the final corner there, but as we've seen Mitchell McLeod running wide into that, you know, he's got to catch up to these guys, and he doesn't want to put it in the wall before he gets there. No, absolutely not. He's got to be perfect at this point. And the issue is that catching is one thing, passing is another. And Josh Anderson, if he is going to have any chance at making it into the final, he's got to get not just one car, but around two. And you can see just pushing right up to the apex, trail braking all the way in the Porsche, a bit unloaded on that front right tyre. And again, just it's very tricky to get the front right tyre into these corners, especially with the bumps. Really forces the car to lock up quite a lot. So Anderson's having to work quite a lot, really working the wheel as well, out of the bridge section as well, using all the curb. He is making every use of the curbing around this Oran Park circuit, and the gap at the front still 0.8 of a second, but the gap to third 3.1. But at this rate, he's got to do a little bit more. 3.1 seconds, that's only 0.6 gain this lap at the moment, and 0.6 will not get him onto the gearbox of Mitch McLeod or Daniel Benefield soon enough. So as he crosses the line this time around, we'll get the lap times for you, but the gap needs to come down quicker for Josh Anderson. This is not what he needs. Mitch McLeod not able to get the gap down to Benefield either. So Benefield, who's wearing gloves, he's all prepared for this race. He is as focused as you can imagine, watching everyone's laps before he jumps in the rig to get every advantage, because these drivers have not driven these conditions before this race. They've jumped in cold turkey straight into this, but Benefield is a driver that's been looking at what others have been doing, what brake, like how hard on the brakes are they, how are they trail braking. Every detail he can pick up, that is what he has been using to his advantage, and so far it's paying off quite nicely. Yeah, absolutely, but we can see Josh Anderson just lingering in the background there. The gap to the lead back down to 2.4 seconds. He is lapping 0.7 faster than any of these guys at the moment, but is that going to be enough? There's just one lap to go, and I fear that for Josh Anderson, it's just not going to be enough time to pull that gap back in. Maybe another 2 or 3 laps, and we might have something done. The gap now 2.1 seconds up to the lead for Josh Anderson. Mitchell McLeod still tucked in behind Daniel Benefield, just 0.6 behind, and Mitch is going to have to really do something special here, as we can see. Very late on the brakes, locking that inside left front, which is so easy to do in turn 1 here as you put all the load on the right hand side of the car, and he is trying to maximize every opportunity around this track. Daniel Benefield has to just keep a cool head, make sure he doesn't run wide, just hit those apexes. I think if he can do that for the rest of this race, he's going to be one of our finalists today. Josh Anderson now at 1.8 seconds, but he's only got half a lap to get it back, and I don't think it's going to be enough. Mitchell McLeod still holding at 0.6 of a second behind. A little bit of what could have been for Mitchell McLeod if he didn't have that damage to that car. I wonder if he would have been able to catch back up. And Josh Anderson now actually starting to fall back off. He may have realized that it's just not quite there for him, and as we round the final quarter, so long as Daniel Benefield can keep it out of the wall and keep the traction nice and true, Daniel Benefield will take out semi-final number 2 at the Sim Racing Showdown, and he will take a place in our finals for a shot at the win and a shot at a seat in a Formula 4 car. Absolutely, it was an absolutely stormy drive from Daniel Benefield, a great drive. And I'm actually going to do something a little bit different here, and I'm going to interview him straight from the rig, get exactly the first impressions. Daniel, you've just made your way into the final. An unbelievable race. You had so much pressure. How was it from the cockpit?
That felt a lot longer than 7 laps. That felt a lot longer than 7 laps, but I kind of caked the start again like I have all week. But it kind of worked for me this time. I saw Josh kind of go across to defend Mitch, and at that point, I saw
So like in the final, knowing that you will probably be on the front row of the grid for that one, and that it could be all to play for into turn 1 once again with a big prize on the line.
Well, I mean, Andrew and I were racing each other in one of the quarterfinal races yesterday, so we kind of know how each other race. We're kind of similar in pace, so it'll be interesting to see what happens later on this afternoon.
Fantastic. Well, Daniel Benefield has indeed made his way into the final in semi-final number 2. So he won the race, did what he had to do, and starting from 3rd on the grid is not an easy thing to do, but he withstood the pressure and made it all the way to the end. It was a fantastic drive, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. And as he said, you know, he just managed there to stick in there and pick up the pieces. And I think we all saw, I mean, Josh Anderson has been very fast all weekend, and I think that a few of these drivers probably knew that if they didn't get him by turn 1, I mean, I race against Josh Anderson quite frequently myself, and I kind of have the same strategy on some tracks where we see that he out-qualifies us by quite a few tenths, and we go, well, if we can't get him by turn 1, we're going to have to rely on him making a mistake. So I think Mitch kind of knew that that was the case and fired it down the inside, and unfortunately for both of them, you know, it turned out better for Mitch than it did for Josh, and we saw that. I mean, that was a very impressive drive from Josh to come back from 6 seconds behind and finish within 2 seconds of the leader. Very impressive, absolutely, but didn't really work out for Josh or Mitch McLeod on that occasion. But a big congratulations to Daniel Benefield. As we've said, he has been in the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown garage pretty much since 8 o'clock on Friday morning, and he has been observing every single person that comes through here, and that has obviously gone to show that it does pay off to study your opponents and also just manage to keep a cool head when you're out in the lead of a race and with big pressure on your shoulders.
And one of the drivers that had a lot of pressure on their shoulders to perform was, of course, Josh Anderson. He has been quickest in all the practice sessions, has been absolutely flying all weekends, but we said that it could come undone in just a heartbeat here at Sydney Motorsport Park, and indeed it has today, as Josh Anderson will unfortunately not make his way into the final after so many thought he was the favourite to walk away with it as well. But what we might just do is head our way onto a break. So from Sydney Motorsport Park, this has been the 2018 Virtual Sim Racing Showdown semi-final number 3, coming up in just a few moments' time.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hi there, I'm Richard Jobling, Senior Software Engineer here at iRacing. I'd like to show you some of the work that we've been doing to improve the collision and the damage in our sim. One of the major changes we've made is how our collision systems work. The old system stored the track as parametric surfaces, and the cars were made of collections of spheres. As the cars moved around the track, we would recompute planes using the track surfaces and then test those against the spheres. This worked well for spheres, but was too specialized to adapt to our shapes. So for the new system, we've built new high-resolution meshes for each track. This is more efficient and gives us a lot more flexibility for the car shapes. The new mesh incorporates all the track features our guys worked so hard to replicate. Things like curb geometry and changes in the surface material are all baked into the mesh. We've also taken our laser scan data and applied that to the mesh. And since the mesh is so high resolution, we capture all the detail that's necessary so that the tracks are just like the real thing. With our new mesh, we can now represent cars using smooth, convex hulls, which grouped together form the chassis, the bodywork, and all the other parts of the car. The new shapes are a much closer fit to the shape of the real car. During impacts, the shapes can deform according to the damage, and eventually they can break off as separate objects. All the parts, like wings, hoods and wheels, can also hang from their joints, flapping and vibrating until they eventually snap off. All these changes are going to add a whole new level of realism to our races. If you want to find out more, please visit iRacing.com and check out my blog post for lots more details.
Hi, my name is Greg Hill. I'm the Vice President of Art and Production here at iRacing. This damage project that we've been discussing is certainly a project that involved all hands on deck to pull off. We've got a rather sizable number of cars in our portfolio, and not all of these cars have been built with this dynamic damage system in mind. So what we had to do is one by one go through our race cars, and we had a team of 3 artists, a highly technical modeler, our technical art director, and our associate art director. All took on each car one at a time, and the work involved was researching that car, researching what would happen to that car if it were in a crash, depending on the forces involved in the crash, how severely it would be damaged, what parts might come off, what those pieces might look like when they're removed, what it would look like where the car has areas exposed that were previously covered by bodywork. So they had to do a lot of modeling to each race car, and they had to do a lot of work to essentially set up how the car would react to forces. So essentially setting the strength of the materials. What kind of force would it take to rip off this side pod, for example? Or under what circumstances would this nose cone get ripped off of a car? Or under which would it remain, but just be badly damaged? But all said, it's been a lot of work, but seeing the car models interact with the physics system and the new crash dynamics is really exciting and really cool to see, and definitely makes all that hard work worth it.
Hi, my name is Jose Diaz. I'm a visual effects artist at iRacing. I specialize in particle effects ranging from fireworks to water fountains, debris, crash, impacts, all in the service of improving the driving experience. So you have the main sort of new damage model that Richard's been working on. So that takes into consideration all the mounts and the chassis from the cars and which materials they are. And he's making all the calculations that tell you, like, okay, it got hit from this one side and the strength of that impact is this certain amount of values. If you hit something, that means that this mount gets off, something breaks. This gets added on top of that to sort of complement what is happening there with things that you would see in real life when a car crashes. So typically in a car crash, you will see all these little particles of dust, metal, scratches that will take all that force and momentum and kind of explode in a way. And it's all being driven by how fast the car was coming, how hard the impact was against what. That will give you that sense of like, man, that person really crashed hard, or oh, it was just a small bump.
Hi, my name is Chris Lurch. I'm one of the vehicle dynamicists here at iRacing. Our role in the collision project is to tune the collision properties of each and every car to ensure that they behave and wrecks as a real car would. And we've spent quite a bit of time going through literature from the automotive industry on the subject to make sure that we have panels that deform the way they're supposed to, both temporarily and permanently, that pieces that don't deform but rather just break at appropriate times in appropriate ways. The cars are absorbing energy the way they should and aren't sort of bouncing off the walls in crazy ways. The major properties that we look at are stiffnesses, which is how much a piece of the car deforms when a load is applied to it. And then we look at a couple of limits. One is the force limit beyond which the piece deforms permanently. And then the second limit that we look at is the brake limit, the force limit beyond which the piece will simply break. And then we also will look at damping, which is how much the piece absorbs energy versus how much it takes like a spring and can absorb as potential energy and then rebound back out like a like a basketball would.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
what he's able to do on the brakes. He does have a nice advantage now, out to 3.2 seconds, and Daniel Shields is way off the pace now. It doesn't look like he's actually just coming over the bridge after still doing a good job. Looks like he's been very practice that he has had on the racing service. Many people in the sim racing very impressed with how he has performed, and we do look forward to seeing him in many more races on the iRacing service as it comes. But at the moment, he is unfortunately at the very back of the pack now. Richard Hampstead trying to close in that gap to Dylan Shepherd, but unfortunately it is extending for him lap after lap. Dylan Shepherd now out to a 3.8-second lead. Just looking at some of the lap times here, and looks like Dylan Shepherd currently on a 1:05.3, pardon me, which has very good pace, very on par with the other drivers that we have seen in the previous two semi-finals. And unfortunately, Bo Albert will not be joining me for this semi-final, or nor the final, I believe. He's going to be joining Greg Rust and a couple of other real-life commentators live here at the track. So I will be taking you through for the semi-final and the final as we start lap number 5 of 7. And Richard Hampstead has a little bit of damage on that car and just not able to keep it on the track as well as he would like. Richard's been unsettled in the last couple of races, and obviously he basically got a free pass into the semi-finals after a bit of an exciting exit from David Haynes in yesterday's quarter-final. And today, once again, Richard Hampstead carrying a little bit of damage in this final semi-final. So Dylan Shepherd continues around, about to start lap number 6 of 7. Just keep it nice, cool, calm, and collected. Comes down the main straight here as a historic, very historic, permanently historic, we'll have to say, Oran Park, as he just clips the inside curve there on the way into turn number 1, just picking up the inside lock there as the tyre gets loaded on the right-hand side. But looking like he's very comfortable at the moment, and we don't have a live feed of the sim for you right this very second, but he is looking pretty comfortable as it stands. You've got a screen there for you now. Dylan Shepherd is in the middle machine, and as we can see right now, he's actually looking a little squirrely as he comes out of the double right-handed there, and now coming up through the left-hander uphill, very difficult corner, a little bit of opposite lock as he comes through there, and he's now extended that gap out to 3.4 seconds. So Dylan Shepherd, just one more lap to go before he secures himself a spot in the final today here at Sydney Motorsport Park for the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown, where of course he will hopefully be competing for a spot as a test day in a Formula 4 car. Not many corners to go now for Dylan Shepherd as they just start the final lap. Richard Hampstead has managed to bring that gap down just a tiny bit, but it's not going to be enough for him to progress himself forward unless Dylan Shepherd has something go wrong for him in the final few corners. And unfortunately, Daniel Shields getting a jump start there, and also having a bit of a mistake earlier in the race as well. Richard Hampstead went off the track early into the gravel, put a bit of damage onto his car, which has caused him to not be able to keep up the pace of Dylan Shepherd here. So Dylan Shepherd now comes through the left-hander up the hill just before the dog leg. The blind right, blind left. Make sure you hit that apex nicely, otherwise you run too wide. Very late, deep on the brakes, kissing that apex very nicely there, running it out wide. And Dylan Shepherd will be our final placeholder in the Final Four this afternoon, and he will have an opportunity to get a seat in a Formula 4 car. Richard Hampstead comes across the line in second, and we will just view Daniel Shields as he makes his way through the last section of the track, under the bridge, through the right-hander. This is a very fun little bit of track here, getting a nice amount of curve, both on the right and the left hand, are running it out very wide. And again, these are very good lines from Daniel Shields, and we can see why he's been doing so well, using all the little bits of track to his advantage, and those are the perfect lines to take very late and deep on the brakes and just clipping the apex very nicely. They're running it out to the edge, a little bit of a wiggle on the way out of there, and a little bit of sideways action and into the wall as he comes over the line for Daniel Shields. So a big congratulations to Dylan Shepherd. He's got the cameras in his face at the moment, being interviewed while he is in the sim. As we can see in our picture-in-picture there, we have a television crew down here for the Shannons Nationals, as this is actually a CAMS sanctioned event. And don't know if you guys were able to see it earlier, but all of our entrants here today were gifted CAMS E licenses, which they will be able to use for any future esports events that are coming up in the near future. And what we will do now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the final race coming up in about an hour's time. We will be back live on the air for that in about an hour. So we will take you, we'll just keep on rolling for a little bit, and we'll see if we can maybe get an interview for our stream with Dylan Shepherd very shortly. We'll just see if we can get Dylan over and get an interview. Can we get an interview with Dylan for the iRacing thing? Yeah, beautiful. So we thank you very much for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We are obviously live on set here at the Shannons Nationals, and we will come around here for an interview. We'll get Fonty on the camera to set us up there. Dylan, congratulations. You've secured yourself a spot in the final for today's Virtual Sim Racing Showdown. Now, there's obviously a very big prize on offer today, a test day in a Formula 4 car. Do you think that that's going to add a little bit of pressure to the final, or do you think you can keep your cool?
Oh, for certain, it's going to add massive pressure. You know, that Zach, yeah, it's going to be like racing Andrew back in the karting days as well, and he's moved on to cars as well. And yeah, I think all the guys here, we all dream about being in real race cars. That's why we're back home doing this every night, I think. So yeah, massive prize. I'm going to try and keep it in the back of my head, but it's going to be there. So yeah, massive pressure, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, now you said you've obviously raced with Andrew Carl in the past, and he's obviously one of my teammates, and I know that he is extremely quick. If there's a guy to beat in my team, it's Andrew Carl. And you've also got Daniel Benefield, who's also a very quick and consistent driver as well. What do you think what are you kind of thinking is going to be your strategy for the race, and how you're going to go about it?
I'm hoping it just goes how it has so far for me this weekend, and just try and get to the front and stay there. Me and Daniel, we both drive for Positive Sim Racing as well, so maybe that might come into play, but at the same time, I think all three guys on track are going to have so much respect for each other. Hopefully it doesn't end in tears, but I think it could be a good race if we can stay close.
Excellent. Not a problem at all. Well, Dylan, thank you very much for joining us, mate. We really appreciate you coming down. And we will take a break now, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back on the air in about an hour for the final of the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown here at Sydney Motorsport Park, proudly presented on the iRacing Esports Network and supported by Motum Simulations and CAMS Australia. We'll be back in about an hour's time, and we look forward to seeing you then.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hi there, I'm Richard Jobling, Senior Software Engineer here at iRacing. I'd like to show you some of the work that we've been doing to improve the collision and the damage in our sim. One of the major changes we've made is how our collision systems work. The old system stored the track as parametric surfaces, and the cars were made of collections of spheres. As the cars moved around the track, we would recompute planes using the track surfaces, and then test those against the spheres. This worked well for spheres, but was too specialized to adapt to our shapes. So for the new system, we've built new high-resolution meshes for each track. This is more efficient and gives us a lot more flexibility for the car shapes. The new mesh incorporates all the track features our guys work so hard to replicate. Things like curb geometry and changes in the surface material are all baked into the mesh. We've also taken our laser scan data and applied that to the mesh. And since the mesh is so high resolution, we capture all the detail that's necessary so that the tracks are just like the real thing. With our new mesh, we can now represent cars using smooth, convex hulls, which grouped together form the chassis, the bodywork, and all the other parts of the car. The new shapes are a much closer fit to the shape of the real car. During impacts, the shapes can deform according to the damage, and eventually they can break off as separate objects. All the parts, like wings, hoods, and wheels, can also hang from their joints, flapping and vibrating until they eventually snap off. All these changes are going to add a whole new level of realism to our races. If you want to find out more, please visit iRacing.com and check out my blog post for lots more details.
Hi, my name is Greg Hill. I'm the Vice President of Art and Production here at iRacing. This damage project that we've been discussing is certainly a project that involved all hands on deck to pull off. We've got a rather sizable number of cars in our portfolio, and not all of these cars have been built with this dynamic damage system in mind. So what we had to do is one by one go through our race cars, and we had a team of 3 artists, a highly technical modeler, our technical art director, and our associate art director. All took on each car one at a time, and the work involved was researching that car, researching what would happen to that car if it were in a crash, depending on the forces involved in the crash, how severely it would be damaged, what parts might come off, what those pieces might look like when they're removed, what it would look like where the car has areas exposed that were previously covered by bodywork. So they had to do a lot of modeling to each race car, and they had to do a lot of work to essentially set up how the car would react to forces. So essentially setting the strength of the materials. What kind of force would it take to rip off this side pod, for example? Or under what circumstances would this nose cone get ripped off of a car? Or under which would it remain, but just be badly damaged? But all said, it's been a lot of work, but seeing the car models interact with the physics system and the new crash dynamics is really exciting and really cool to see, and definitely makes all that hard work worth it.
Hi, my name is Jose Diaz. I'm a visual effects artist at iRacing. I specialize in particle effects ranging from fireworks to water fountains, debris, crash, impacts, all in the service of improving the driving experience. So you have the main sort of new damage model that Richard's been working on. So that takes into consideration all the mounts and the chassis from the cars and which materials they are. And he's making all the calculations that tell you, like, okay, it got hit from this one side and the strength of that impact is this certain amount of values. If you hit something, that means that this mount gets off, something breaks. This gets added on top of that to sort of complement what is happening there with things that you would see in real life when a car crashes. So typically in a car crash, you will see all these little particles of dust, metal, scratches that will take all that force and momentum and kind of explode in a way. And it's all being driven by how fast the car was coming, how hard the impact was against what. That will give you that sense of like, man, that person really crashed hard, or oh, it was just a small bump.
Hi, my name is Chris Lurch. I'm one of the vehicle dynamicists here at iRacing. Our role in the collision project is to tune the collision properties of each and every car to ensure that they behave and wrecks as a real car would. And we've spent quite a bit of time going through literature from the automotive industry on the subject to make sure that we have panels that deform the way they're supposed to, both temporarily and permanently. that pieces that don't deform, but rather just break at appropriate times in appropriate ways. The cars are absorbing energy the way they should and aren't sort of bouncing off the walls in crazy ways. The major properties that we look at are stiffnesses, which is how much a piece of the car deforms when a load is applied to it. And then we look at a couple of limits. One is the force limit beyond which the piece deforms permanently. And then the second limit that we look at is the break limit, the force limit beyond which the piece will simply break. And then we also will look at damping, which is how much the piece absorbs energy versus how much it takes like a spring and can absorb as potential energy and then rebound back out like a basketball would.
following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2018 Virtual Sim Racing Showdown live here from Sydney Motorsport Park. We have our finalists sitting in the Sims. Dylan Shepherd on the very left-hand side, Andrew Carl in the middle, and Daniel Benefield all sitting in their Sims, just preparing to put on their visors and getting ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the big race of the day. This is the final. This is who decides who gets to sit in a Formula 4 car, and it's going to be very exciting. So as we can see now, Daniel Benefield closest on screen. We've got Andrew Carl in the middle there, and it might be a little bit difficult to see Dylan Shepherd all the way down the back there, but there he is, giving us a little shaka as he prepares himself for today's race. So this is the final, and it's going to be very exciting for everybody. We'll leave you to watch those guys. I'm going to join David Haynes over here, who was obviously in the competition yesterday and had a bit of an unfortunality in his quarterfinal yesterday. And David, you've been here the last couple of days and watching the event, and what kind of pressure do you think is on these guys right now as they are just getting ready to put the visors on?
Crazy pressure. I reckon, you know, we've whittled it down from the best online qualifiers to the best people to come here in Sydney, and now we've gotten down to the final three. One of these three people is going to win that Formula 4 test, and one of them will have that honour of winning the first ever CAMS sanctioned iRacing event.
Absolutely, and a good point that is. This is one of the, this is the first sanctioned esports event by CAMS. All of the drivers here have been given a CAMS E license, which they will hopefully be able to use for future CAMS esports events. And it is obviously fantastic to have such an organisation, obviously a member of the FIA, CAMS is, to be on board with esports, and it's fantastic to see esports really starting to take off, especially in the last couple of years with the thanks of many companies such as iRacing. We've obviously got the iRacing Esports Network, which we are broadcasting to you live from now. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't had an opportunity to already do so, please do subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network, and don't forget to leave a big fat like on this show for today, because every little bit helps towards growing our community and bringing us a larger presence in the online and motorsports community. So we'll ask you and thank you for doing that. And we're just waiting at the moment for the green light, because we do have to wait for a Formula 4 race to finish just before we do go live here. I believe Greg Rust and Bo Albert on the other stream are just about to think we're all getting ready to go. So as we said, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Carl will be starting from pole position in this race today. I believe Daniel Benefield will be starting from position number 2, and Dylan Shepherd will be starting out of position number 3. Just some quick words before we get to the racing. David, who do you think is going to take it away today?
I think absolutely Andrew Carl is starting on pole, and that's because he's been seated there because he's done so well so far this competition. I think he'd be a favourite, but good on these other two guys making it all the way to this stage of the competition.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, David. The revs are rising, as you can hear. Here we are. This is it. VSR Showdown, final round for the championship. Andrew Carl off to a good start. Dylan Shepherd on the right-hand side of the screen got off nicely as well. In fact, that's Dylan Shepherd in the red car by me, who's going to fire down the inside of Andrew Carl. Almost contact. And Andrew Carl's lost it as they come into turn number 1. And he's backed across the front of the track. He's spun out. Have to see if we can get vision on where he is in relation to the rest of the field. He's completely off the back. Dylan Shepherd now has a lead of almost a second and a half over Daniel Benefield as Andrew Carl has rejoined the track and starting to make his way back around the course. Now, Andrew Carl, obviously the top-seeded driver, he has been very quick. We saw Josh Anderson have issues in the earlier race. He was not able to bring it back. Andrew Carl has a big gap to make up, and Daniel Benefield just looks like he's struggling for grip right now. We are on different track conditions as we were for the semi-finals. A little bit hotter here, and Daniel Benefield Benefield as well on board, just running very wide on the entry into that left-hander there and subsequently totally missing the apex. And what do you make of that start there, David, as we saw Dylan going for the move on Andrew in turn 1?
It wasn't entirely unexpected, you know, the desperation of this kind of sprint racing is really driving such pride on the line. The first lap, first turn, you know, we always say you can't win the race there, you can only lose it, but with a short race like this, you know, you've got to get to the front and stay there if you want to win that main prize.
Yeah, absolutely right. So at the moment, Dylan Shepherd does lead. Daniel Benefield has been struggling big time. He's 5 seconds off the pace. Andrew Carl is 8 seconds off the pace and does have a little bit of a gap to catch up to Daniel Benefield. So Dylan Shepherd has it all to lose now. Doesn't look like he is short of pushing right now, using every little bit of track that he can, just getting a little bit loose as we have a beautiful helicopter shot here. Now up through the left-hander, which becomes off camber and is also going uphill. Very easy to lose the rear of the car as you come up through there. Now the downwind chicane, very blind, then hard on the brakes as he comes into the final corner, running a very shallow entry line there, taking a nice straight line out and running it up to the wall very nicely. Daniel Benefield is struggling big time, it has to be said. He's dropped off a second and a half off this lap, and Andrew Carl is starting to catch him very quickly, David.
Yep, Andrew Carl could get up into second place very conceivably, but he's not going to win anything from second place. He needs first, and at this point, he might just be too far back for the win to be possible for Andrew Carl, unless something horrible happens to Dylan Shepherd.
Yeah, well, we did see some technical issues happening yesterday for both Dylan Shepherd and Andrew Carl, so maybe that's the only way that Andrew is going to make up we have seen people making unforced errors throughout the weekend, and we're on board with Andrew Carl now. He comes over the old bridge through the right-hander. This is one of the fastest sections of the track, one of the most fun sections of the track. Got to make sure you hit your marks though, got to take plenty of curb on the entry through this little section here, and he's done nicely there to track it out to the outside edge, keep it on a nice straight line, not getting too much oversteer. Now up through the dogleg, you can see the amount that he's been able to rein in Daniel Benefield in just this last lap. About a second that he's managed to pull in on Benefield the last time that went round, and Daniel Benefield pushing the limits on the rear grip of that Porsche Cup car and just taking it out to the outside edge of the track and almost flipping the wall. But Dylan Shepherd still looking very strong. Andrew Carl lapping at a very similar pace, but just not quite able to close down the gap at the moment. So the race will be on for P number 2, Daniel Benefield and Andrew Carl, as we see Daniel taking quite a wide entry into that corner as opposed to Andrew, who's going for a shallow entry and just carrying a lot of really nice point speed. Andrew Carl is starting to catch up onto Benefield now.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few ways you can drive these Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars. You know, one of them is really stomp on the power with all that weight over the rear wheels, and one of them is really carry the speed through the corners. It's two different driving styles, but it's working for Andrew Carl right now. He's right up behind Daniel Benefield.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got that beautiful shot looking back at the blue Motum Simulation car of Andrew Carl as Daniel Benefield just runs a little bit wide, and that allows Andrew to just poke his nose in there, and we see Daniel Benefield getting so close that the camera pretty much gets sent outside of the track there, and Andrew now looking for a way past Daniel Benefield as he's now within 3/10 of a second. Very, very nice under braces. Andrew Carl taking a very nice tight line there. We have a very nice shot there as he looks up towards Daniel Benefield. Daniel now getting on the defensive, just using a bit of an inside line there, and Andrew Carl rubbing the rear bumper of Daniel Benefield as they come through turn number 3 there. But he's going to have to find somewhere else to do it. Very close quarters in this racing circuit. Very hard to find an opportunity to make an overtake, and it's going to rely on a small mistake. And if Andrew can keep applying this much pressure to Daniel Benefield, I think he might just be able to force Daniel into an error and make his way through. We can see Andrew using the inside curb there much more aggressively than Daniel, and coming up through this dogleg, there is a nice amount of speed there. Andrew shoves it, looks down the inside, trying to force Daniel to make a mistake and pushing him up through the exit of the final corner there, but unfortunately that's compromised Andrew's exit onto the main straight, and he's going to have to find another way round as he just doesn't quite have enough grunt in the back of that Cup car to make it through down the straight. very late and confident on the brakes though is Andrew Carl as they come back down into turn number 1. Very nice and smooth on the gas pedal as he goes to the outside. Daniel Benefield once again going for the defensive line. Andrew Carl going to try and send it around the outside. Not quite able to make it work this time though. Going to try and go for the overrun. And Daniel Benefield covers him off and has to take a very compromised line as they come through 4 and 5. Now is Andrew Carl going to try and go around the outside of bridge. There's no room left. He's going to have to find somewhere else to do it, but ever looking in every possible location to make a move is Andrew Carl and Daniel Benefield, and you can see right now, David, the pressure is starting to get to Daniel big time.
Yeah, the pressure is immense, but Daniel Benefield has got through to this final because he's semi-final. He's in track with the other competitors. He might not be the fastest, but he's gotten here because he's finished every race and hasn't cracked yet.
And Andrew Carl now looking for a way round the outside, going to cut back in. That is a fantastic move from Andrew Carl. Now it's a drag race down into turn 1 with a beautiful over-under move on Andrew Carl. And we do now start the final lap. Dylan Shepherd has an immense lead over these two. Late on the brakes is Andrew Carl just cutting across the inside as they go side by side into turn number 2, and there's a little bit of a rub. Daniel Benefield gets pushed just slightly to the outside of the track. Andrew Carl does get the move done, and he's now into position number 2 in the final of the VSR Showdown. But Dylan Shepherd has been putting on a very commanding performance, and obviously these two cars have been scrapping quite a lot. Dylan Shepherd now coming through the final section of the track. Just a few corners to go, but we've had a spin, and Andrew Carl and Daniel Benefield have come together. We will get a replay for you in just a few moments, ladies and gentlemen. And Andrew Carl was coming into turn number 3. Daniel Benefield following closely, and Andrew Carl, as we've just seen the finish of the race in real time, ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Shepherd did come over the line, and as we see on screen, Andrew Carl just running a little wide, and Daniel Benefield looking for an opportunistic move down the inside at the bridge there, and that wasn't quite able to work. But Dylan Shepherd has taken home the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown. We get a replay for you, ladies and gentlemen, out of respect for the man coming across the line with a little bit of a slide and a little bit of a tail kick as he comes across the line, and there it is. What an amazing finish to this race from the last two competitors. But Dylan Shepherd, he made the break early. He got down the inside of Andrew Carl, albeit with a little bit of a rub, but he maintained that position out the front and was able to take home the prize. Dylan Shepherd will be taking home the first place trophy this evening, as well as getting a drive in a Formula 4 car. Your final thoughts on that race day?
Well, obviously, Andrew Carl and Daniel Benefield gave amazing close racing. But what that did was let Dylan Shepherd get out ahead, clear, take this win almost convincingly, and he must be very happy with himself because this is a momentous event to be the winner of.
Absolutely, and ladies and gentlemen, we will see if we can get a interview with Dylan Shepherd very shortly. He will be joining us very shortly. He's obviously just right now at the moment with one of Australia's most famous commentators, Greg Rust, as we're also filming here for the Shannons Nationals this evening. So Dylan's still in the sim and he will join us very shortly. But obviously, we absolutely have to thank everyone for tuning in, and all the members from CAMS, from the Shannons Nationals, who have supported us at this event, and Motum Simulators for providing these absolutely fantastic MP6 simulators, which you can see with me now. And it looks like we are just having a bit of a look at the incident at turn number 1 with Dylan Shepherd and Andrew Carl there, and looks like we even have our lead adjudicators doing that. But we do have Daniel Benefield with me at the moment, and Daniel, not an ideal start to the race there, and just had to have a bit of a fight with Andrew Carl. How did you feel that race went for you?
Not great. I mean, when Andrew came back across turn 2, I had nowhere to go really, and tagged him unfortunately and bent my suspension, so I think my wheel was probably about 30 degrees left hand down the whole race, which is partly why he caught me so quickly, and it was really hard to keep him behind me because of the damage. I mean, I'm not sure if he got any damage from it. I don't think he did, but it really screwed my race really but it happened, and it's racing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's racing, and obviously, I'm sure Andrew wasn't looking. He wasn't probably too happy about that contact that him and Dylan had in turn number 1. But you know, that is one of the things that happens when you do racing. But we will congratulate you because you've done an absolutely fantastic job, and to say that you're a finalist in the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown is a real achievement, and hopefully we will have many more. And do you have any things that you'd like to say about your sim racing team, or sponsors that you'd like to thank for getting yourself down here?
Yeah, so obviously thank you to Positive Sim Racing, my team back home, well, not back home, but European-based team that helps me get to where I want to be with the Neo and later this year and the start of next year. The University of Isabel, the first over in Spain, we have a great program with them. Not so much for me, but for the guys over in Europe, just with some data and engineering help. It's a great program we have with them. We had an event day a couple of weeks ago, actually, on campus. Great event.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Daniel. We will see if we can get Andrew Carl. Thanks very much, Daniel. I really appreciate it, man. And Andrew, do you want to come over and just have a couple of words? I know that was probably a little bit of a frustrating race for you. Obviously, that contact at turn 1 was less than ideal. What are your thoughts on that incident at the beginning of the race?
I think I'll just have to look at it on the replay before I can really say anything about it. But yeah, I don't think it was that great. But yeah, we'll have to have a definite look at it.
Yeah, no, I definitely can respect that. Obviously, heat of the moment, it's hard to say something without having a look back at it. But you know, you've obviously done this Virtual Sim Racing Showdown before, and you've obviously done a lot better this time than you did last time. Obviously making it to the final and coming home in second place is still to get a trophy to take home as well. But do you have any sponsors or any people that you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Motum Sports for putting on the event, but putting the effort into it and like encouraging me to go do it. I think that was the biggest thing because I'm pretty busy with university, so
come over for a bit of an interview. Dylan, congratulations, mate. How are you feeling after that?
Good. Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one into turn 1. I'm not too sure what happened. Everyone's been looking over it. The sim hasn't registered the car contact for 0x, so yeah. I'm not too sure, but I definitely had good pace afterwards, and yeah, just made sure to keep it consistent and get used to that brake pedal because it was a bit different, but yeah, otherwise it was good.
Excellent. So as it stands, you have a seat in an F4 car for a day. Is that kind of a bit of a surreal experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, any day in a race car is a good day, I suppose. So yeah, I'm absolutely stoked to have that. Didn't think all them nights wasted on my simulator during the week is going to pay off like that, but yeah, it looks like it has.
I know. Well, this is actually really bizarre because I think you've just won a seat in an F4 car, and I have also won a R8 GT3 car at some point, not to do distant future. So we're two very lucky this weekend. So Dylan, do you have any sponsors or anyone you'd like to thank for coming down and supporting you for this event?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously got to thank all the boys at One Performance Racing. Everyone's been putting so much work in the last few months, so it's definitely paying off, all the laps that all the boys have been putting in. I've got to thank developments. He's come on and helped us out a lot as well. I've got Race Centers come on as well. Night Rider Designs, you know, Jake, he's done so much work as well. And obviously all my friends and family for sticking around as well to watch me cut laps on the sim.
Excellent. Well, Dylan, once again, mate, congratulations for taking down the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown. We're going to do a podium in the not too distant future, which unfortunately I don't think we will be able to bring you live. But we do thank you so much for joining us at the first Virtual Sim Racing Showdown here at Sydney Motorsport Park. And thank you to the Shannons Nationals, to CAMS, to Motum Simulations as well. This has been broadcast on the iRacing Esports Network on behalf of V8SONLINE. once again, we thank you so much for joining us. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and smash that like button, because as I'm sure you've all seen, it's been an absolutely fantastic event, and absolutely something that's going to push our sport forward in the future in terms of legitimacy. So thank you all for watching.
I think we definitely need to also thank V8SONLINE for all the effort they've put in.
Actually,
they've put in so much work.
Yeah,
as
Fonty,
well.
who's standing behind the webcam, who's doing a bit of race review with the cams guys at the moment, and also to Jay, who is on a different location from normal for him at the now streaming the Bathurst 1000 for Scops. Massive effort from those guys, and a lot of logistical things that have had to been worked out as we've been broadcasting live from location. So yes, you're absolutely right, Dylan. Big shout out to those guys as well. So thank you very much for joining us once again, and hopefully you will be joining us for another event much like this. But always, we have much content on V8SONLINE throughout the rest of the week, and we'll be joining you then. So have a great day, and if you do want to, go over and see the V8 Scops Bathurst 1000, one of the biggest races of the year, and it's going to be one to watch for sure. But until next time, we'll see you soon.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.